Okay, evening everyone. Thank you all for making it, especially those of you who are a bit under the weather. I'm in the same boat, so hopefully none of the other councillors are going to go away with anything, hopefully, tonight, that they didn't plan on. Okay, so we've had a few apologies for absence.
Yes, I've had apologies from Councillor Fuller, Councillor Glenn and Councillor Clark.
So I assume we're happy to accept those. Declarations of interest, so if anyone has anything to declare in terms of the usual disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests. Disposable ones. Councillor Peel.
I understand that I have a cheque being signed today, so I can't really I have got a disposable interest, I suppose.
Okay.
And St Christopher's Drive resident.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, nothing else? Okay, so minutes of the previous meeting. So we've got the full council meeting of 20th of November in the pack. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. And if no one's got any comments or clarifications, then I'll ask someone to propose those. Okay. Councillor Peel was just there first, I think. Councillor Stark seconding, I think.
I don't mind.
And those in favour? So that's fine. So I can initial these, yes, and so on.
I'm sure you can show it.
Great, and then the next ones are the Neighbourhood Planfield Council meeting on the 4th of December. There's just one slight correction here. I wasn't able to make that meeting, you may recall, so I'm on the copy that was produced in the pack. I'm shown as present and as apologies. It was the apologies that's relevant. So I've deleted the present bit. So again, if there's no one's got any questions or clarifications, can I ask someone to propose those? Councillor Sparks, and second, Councillor Robinson, great, in favour. Thank you. Okay, so what's the name? Okay, public participation. Good evening.
May I make a short statement on behalf of the Adult Recreation and Green Spaces Group
You may.
about Fletton Field? We've heard nothing from the County Council. We don't know what they intend to do, although we understand that they might put in another planning application for the field. But back in the summer, when we thought that they would be selling the field during this year, we set the date for the crowdfunding site for the end of the year. It's due to expire on the 31st of December. And we've asked if we can extend it. It could be extended by about a month. But we don't think we're going to learn any more in that period.
No.
So, very disappointingly, we're going to have to close the crowdfunding website. We're going to send an email message around to all those who pledged to support, but none of the pledges will be drawn down. The site will be closed, and hopefully when we know something more about the County Council's intention, we might start it up again later.
Okay.
Just for information.
Thank you very much. That's, as you say, it's just disappointing that we haven't got any clarity on that. But yeah, I mean, I think obviously, you know that the council was very much in support of the bid, so hopefully we can still do that. It's a future date. Okay. Anyone else? No one else wants to say anything. So we don't have any considerations, questions, or charges. No. So we've got a district council's report, I think, in the pack from Councillor Rycole. Councillor Councillor Halls has been planning on saying anything?
No report, I've got to hear what.
Wait, what's I say? Okay, fine. Also in the pack was a very brief report from me, just giving a few brief details about two non-Oundle Town Council meetings that I attended in the last period. One with Oundle School for their it's the Oundle, Peterborough and East Northamptonshire Learning Partnership, if I remember rightly, which is basically all of the primary and secondary schools in the area working together to try and deliver more for both the staff and the pupils. And then the second one was the NCALC larger councils meeting, which was quite a lot of very interesting information on the unitary authority process, which we were promised a presentation from, and Emma's now got it. Great. So I don't know how much sense it will make if she circulates that without having been there to hear the words that go with it, but there is a presentation, and as I say, I did take quite a lot of notes on the night. So I feel a bit more informed than I did previously about what that process looks like. Don't ask me to tell you now without referring to the presentation of the notes, but there is more information there, so if anyone is interested, then perhaps try and talk to me outside the meeting. Next item is to receive consultation from NCC regarding proposed change to the provision of Northamptonshire Libraries and Information Services. So
I think you've forgotten to receive an update on Northbridge.
Oh, I beg your pardon. So I have. Let's have an update on Northbridge.
Okay, well, I'll start and Tony can finish. How's that? Now, I and Tony have been writing to Stuart and Alan for, don't know how many months now. It's been, they must have had 200 emails apiece off us now. We asked for a timeline, well, I asked for a timeline from Alan, because Stuart can't do that, he's on the traffic side, and he will deal with the traffic side anyway, won't he? So that's okay. Alan has at last come back to say that before the new year, we will have a timeline of when the actual bridge repairs will be done. However, I've also received from Creed Charity, and I think some of you know Creed Charities, John Richardson and Peter Cocker, I can never remember his surname, have advised me that NCC did actually contact them to actually get permission to use their field to go into North Bridge. That was 2 months ago. They haven't done a thing since. They also admitted at that meeting with the Creed Charity that they had no subcontractors, and they were supposed to be sort of drawing up a contract with Bledsoe's. Bledsoe's have not been contacted either. With the Creed Charity, they don't meet again now till March, April. So if anything's going to get signed and the contract delivered, that won't be till March or April. So the works can't start until after that date, which, looking at the timeline that we were told, I come to the conclusion there's two things happened. NCC did not think they were going to get any money for the bridge. So they did absolutely nothing. They're now playing catch up. They gave us a timeline of Christmas next year, but quite frankly I think that's now slipped and probably won't be until July 2020. I can't see it getting past that soon. And as I say, Tony will talk to you about the Stagecoach thing, but you know, they haven't talked to Stagecoach for 6 months. I'll leave it there because then Tony can deal with this transport, can't he? The traffic.
Yeah. So just because I know we've got a big agenda, the most important thing on traffic is the Stagecoach. We arranged a meeting with Stagecoach, which was very productive. NCC hadn't spoken to them since May, so you know, they were well behind the game. Stagecoach have agreed to route the bus through New Road and down past Pick Arthur, so you know, the people at that end of town will still have a service. They're yet to come up with a new timetable, but they are doing that in conjunction with the schools to ensure the other end of the process gets to the schools on time. The one thing that they're left with now is an issue of a drop-off point for the bus on the corner of West Street and New Road, New Street. So I get it right. so by the Beans Cafe. And their original plan was to take out the 3 parking spaces. We asked them if they'd do a build-out island at that point, so we kept 2 parking spaces. And they've come back and said it's too expensive, and they want to put the bus, have the bus stopping round the corner on West Street itself. So I don't know if you've all seen the pictures that they've sent. So the choice that we have to make is, you know, whether we lose 3 parking spaces in the town centre, or we allow them to stop and hold the traffic up in West Street. And if they do hold the traffic up, it will only be short periods, because it's only a drop-off point. You know, so you know, there won't be people waiting to get on the bus at that point. It's only to drop off. So I'd appreciate it if we could make a decision on which of those 2 options we support.
We can't reach tonight, can we? Because
Well, we have to reach it tonight.
it's not the agenda.
Sorry?
It's not the agenda tonight, so we can't do it, can we?
Well, if you can't do it, they're going to do it themselves. So we've got a choice. We can have an input now and say this is what we'd rather do, or they'll do whatever they want.
They might well do whatever they want anyway, particularly,
Yeah.
if they say they've got any money to do anything other than do the West Street option.
Where would the pickup point be? If there's
The
a
pickup
drop-off
will be in the
only?
town centre, so where the bus lane. So the bus is going to do a loop. It's going to go up Clapthorne Road, turn right down New Road, down to Pickarthur, and then use the bus stops there, and then into the town centre. And so his timed point will be that bus stop in the town centre. And the only thing that the people have got to realise is the bus in both directions is using the same bus stops. You know, so you know, whether you're going to Corby or Peterborough.
Actually get the right one.
Yeah. But yeah, so the time he will stop in the town centre.
So,
Isn't we're potentially losing 3 parking spots, isn't that the £17,000 option?
Yeah, so
They've ruled out anyway, haven't they?
well, no, they haven't ruled it out. They've just said this will cost them a lot of money. But you know, it's really a case that you know, somebody's got to write to them and say what we want. You know, we've got a choice now of having an input to it. So you know, without any council input, I'll give my own input to it.
I use the bus a lot, and usually you're only dropping 1 or 2 people off.
Yeah.
So the time taken wouldn't be very long. So it could easily be opposite Salerno's by
Yeah.
Beans, or I think outside the bookshop, right opposite the other
Well, it doesn't
bus
go
stop.
that way.
Oh, it won't be going that way, of
No,
course, no.
no, so
Okay, let's go for West Street then, outside. Sorry.
Are they going to consult with them?
No.
They're not, they're just going to do it.
Yeah, so you know, this is the debate. If you look at the timescale, you see that they're going to have the new bus service in January, so they've got to get on with marking the road and doing the painting. So, all right.
I think we'd probably get more flack if we got rid of the parking spaces than the drop-off zones.
I do.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is going to be inconvenient where they're stopping, but it will only be for 2 minutes at max.
Twice an hour.
Yeah,
I doubt it. Well, it might not even be twice an hour. It might be going back to an hourly service, I suspect.
yeah.
Sorry.
We might be going back to an hourly
Oh,
service.
but be careful, they're going in both directions.
Because, yeah.
The Peterborough and the Corby ones will be, we're stopping there. So, but again, I think it is the lesser of 2 evils.
Yeah.
You know, to leave that big parking area in the town centre with no cars in it for the majority of the day,
Yeah.
you know, is wasteful. To get them to do the build out, which is the more sensible route, they're not going to do it.
We're not going to do that, are they?
No.
I mean, just, I'm not trying to be obstructive, but just procedure-wise, we're not supposed to make...
You're not supposed to
We're
make
making
decisions that you
decisions
haven't put on your agenda
Yeah.
that's out to public, because basically
Because
the
the
public
public haven't had a chance to
haven't had a
comment.
chance to have an input.
Yeah.
However, if they're not going to consult with anybody,
Yeah.
they're just going to do this.
Yeah.
So I agree with what Clive said. I think you've sort of got to make, if this is the only time, you've really got to make a decision on
Yeah.
behalf of the people. And I think taking the parking spaces out would cause more problems.
It's not that we've got to make a financial decision.
No.
No, it's
No.
I
No,
don't
the only one on that one is you can.
Sorry,
I was only going to say we're always free to make a decision in an emergency.
Yeah.
Right.
And as this is the only opportunity we have to debate it, I would argue it is an emergency situation.
Okay.
Yeah, the only one on financial is that we could have said we'll pay for it, which I wouldn't even suggest. But you know, that's the only case. All right, so we carry on with the Salinos. as the preferred.
I mean, if we're okay to sort of, we can have a. I wasn't sure what procedurally we're allowed to do.
Okay.
If we can, make that as a formal proposal, then we can write as the council and say we're happy with the suggestion that we go with West Street. If someone wants to propose that, and and second, and in favour, against.
Sorry, who was against that one? Let me just...
Just as a quick point, back to what Peter was saying, I mean, I think I sent I think I told Tony, but I got a letter from Ian Norris, along with a letter from Tom Pursgrove, from saying that in the Norris letter he said that the works on the bridge wouldn't start. We originally were thinking mid-2019, and he states in the letter nothing's going to happen until the latter part of it. So we sort of know that it's going to creep well into the 20.
Okay. Did you get what you needed then? Sorry.
It was just a seconder. Was it you who seconded it?
Me.
Oh, right. You're both in blue as well.
Okay. Are we okay then? Is everyone
I think there's nothing.
Can we move on about that? Right, great. Right, I'm having tried to miss that. Now we can talk about the. Well, it's only really to get the update, isn't it? Basically, that there is a consultation, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
But it basically says we're okay.
Yeah. So I mean, again, it was in your pack. I assume people have had a chance to look at it. Basically, nothing's changed. So the Oundle Library continues to be funded by NCC under that plan, but there is a consultation to say whether we're happy with it. Or I've already done it as an individual, and yes, I am. So if that's that, then. And then the second one was just a consultation as well. So the update and the consultation, Now then, the next one, the report from Northamptonshire Highways regarding East Northampton traffic review. This was quite a limited thing, wasn't it? Really, wasn't it? It was just. Was this the one that?
We had it before,
right?
And I think we approved with it. Other than we wanted to find out if the residents in that area were going to be consulted, which I went back and asked. They obviously have consulted.
Yes.
Because now they've got
responses back.
Back, and so now it's up to the council again to say yes, let's go ahead with it, or in light of the comments they've received. Yeah,
I mean, I don't. Again, I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to read this, but this is about extending double yellow lines on Herne Road. There's been some complaints from residents, or some objections from residents. The report that we've been sent is incomplete. That's basically because that's as far as they've got until they receive comments from us, is it?
Yeah.
So they'll then complete that when we do. I mean, I'm not intimately familiar with it. I don't know that I was even involved in any discussions earlier, but I can't. My first reaction was, why wouldn't we support the residents? Because it doesn't seem to be desperately need of more double yellow lines unless someone knows different.
I have to say, my recollection is that I think we asked for it.
Oh, right.
Yes, we have done previously.
So that might create a difficulty if we now feel that, in the light of representations from residents, but having read it, it hasn't changed my view. I still think it's a sensible thing to do.
And this was about what? Trying to make it easier for access for buses and things? Or?
Yes,
access generally.
Mayhem.
Right.
When the buses are arriving for school. So mayhem.
But it is going to mean that some individuals are going to lose any ability to park outside their properties. Yeah.
Sadly, but since one of them's made their parking into living space, you know, the thing that we're always coming up against, I don't really think that they've got all that strength in their argument.
So the only question I had with it is whether or not it would be more logical as a single yellow line rather than a double to leave them overnight parking. Because there's no buses there at night. There's no buses at night.
The only problem is that there's nobody going to do anything about enforcing it.
No, whether it's double or single, but it's just, it just seems logical.
I'm just wondering whether double means more than single.
Well, it's only mean that double means more than the working day, and single means the working day.
I know what it means.
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
talking about psychologically.
Yeah. No, but it's a recommendation back, though. You know, I feel it's silly to take away their nighttime parking.
yeah. Again, we haven't got. Sorry, Roy. Do you want to say something? No. This way. I mean, when do we need to respond? And is this something that's best done by the planning committee, or
There's not a huge amount of time.
is there not?
Then, well, I think it's early part of next year.
If it's after the 8th of January, we could put it onto the next planning.
Again, we haven't actually sort of got a recommendation to vote on here. Sorry, Peter.
It's all right. I was thinking, why don't we just do as we've done in East Road, and only allow residents parking after 6 o'clock at night, and before 8 o'clock in the morning.
East Road.
Yeah, we have a...
There's a residents parking scheme, isn't it?
Well, that was specially...
Yeah, we'd have to apply to NCC if we wanted to do that.
That's a huge history to that.
Well, it would seem that the single line is a good compromise because it allows a leeway on for both residents and us.
It's cheaper, it saves paint.
And NCC
Chairman,
use all,
can I just
don't
make
they?
one more
Go
comment?
on.
The reality is there is no enforcement in Antwerp.
No, there
You
isn't.
can park on the double yellow lines at night anyway, so...
Yeah. I can't see anywhere in here where it says when they want the response by.
No, I'm just
21
trying to
days
find
from project to advertising. 21 days of public. So responsive reviews, it doesn't actually say when they want our responsive reviews. What do you think? Do we want to try and make, are we happy to say that we'll write and say that we, given the residents' objections, we think a single line with no restriction on parking overnight would be appropriate? Is that...
It seems like a reasonable compromise, anyway.
I think she hadn't given me very much time at all, and I went back and said we've got a meeting on the 18th, so is it okay to get comments back on the 19th? She said yes, that's fine.
Okay.
The school buses come before 8:30, so there would have to be very strict set timings applied to it.
It'll be 8 o'clock in the morning.
8 o'clock,
Yeah,
yeah.
she wants responses by the 19th.
Yeah. Should we do that then?
I propose we do that.
There's a proposal, we do that then. Is someone going to second that?
So we propose-
So Councillor Stagg is proposing writes to say that in light of residents' objections, we think a good compromise would be to allow single yellow line, allow parking overnight. Yeah? Neville?
I'm just voting.
Oh, so you're voting, right. You're one step ahead. Okay, so those in favour? Yeah, I think we're happy with that. Okay, great. So to receive consultation from NCC Conservation Northamptonshire County Council's 1920 budget consultation. Again, it was in your pack. It was just a brief note, really, basically saying they're happy it's done, isn't it? Yeah. So again, unless anyone's got any questions or comments, we'll move on, which is the Clerk's report. So I think that was fairly. Covered what you need to say. So again, I mean, we're just receiving it, so if you're happy with that, okay. Next item then is to approve the bank reconciliation balance sheet, budget report and hub trading account for November 18. So this is obviously was reviewed in Finance Committee last week, and our recommendation is to approve. So a number of you were there anyway. Is anyone wanting to make any questions, or if not, can I ask someone to propose that? Councillor Sparks, Councillor Ormston seconded. Those in favour? Okay. And similarly, that we make the payments. The proposition is that the schedule of payments for November 2018, as presented at this item, are paid up, and all related documentation checks are signed. So again, if I can have someone to propose a second, please. Councillor Robinson proposed. Councillor Stagg seconded. In favour? Okay. Right, next item is to approve SLCC membership for Clerk, Deputy Clerk and Finance Officer. So is this a new membership?
Well, it's mine. You've been renewed for some time.
Yeah.
But obviously now we have Deputy Clerk, and also the Finance Officer can be an affiliate member as well.
Okay, so previously it's just been the Clerk, has it?
Yeah.
But you think it's sensible to have all three?
Yeah,
And I'm sure you've given us the cost, but Have you given us a cost?
Cost is in the pay.
Yeah, I thought you said
It's the payments.
Oh, and there's a list of payments.
But it works out at £200, well, £196 each for the Deputy Finance Officer,
Yeah.
and for myself, I'm just trying to find, it's the remainder of £690.
So I assume we're happy to, yes, propose. Okay, so Councillor Oakes and proposed, and Councillor Robinson seconded, so in favour? Yeah, everyone's happy to do that, so that's great. Next item is the minutes from the Finance and General Purposes Committee held on the 11th of December. So again, a number of you were there, they're in the pack. Am I signing them for assuming they're approved?
No, they're just...
No, we're just
Yeah.
receiving. Okay, of course we are, yeah. Right, now then, next item then is the substantive item really on tonight's agenda, I guess, which is the budget for 1920. Now, again, was discussed at some length in Finance Committee, so a number of you were present for that. What I did do is I prepared a document, which is the budget summary document in your pack, which kind of was intended to save you having to plough through the whole budget line by line and just really summarise what the main points and the main decisions that were made by the Finance Committee. So if it's okay with people, I suggest we just go through that summary document, which summarises, as I say, the main points, and then if there are no significant changes that we feel appropriate, then I would like, if we can, to move on to approve it. So if people okay with that? I'm not sort of railroading you here. I'm not trying not to railroad you here anyway. Just trying to make it clarify what we've done. So the summary then really was that in the previous drafts of the budget that we've looked at, there were basically there were some significant areas of expenditure because everything that people had identified as part of improvement works of a 3-year plan and additional activities that we might take on were put in there. And it really wouldn't have flown as it was because that would have resulted in a very large increase in the precept. So in committee, we spent some time discussing what we thought was appropriate in terms of a level for the precept, and particularly in light of the fact that we've had a very large surplus in the current year. So we're not at the end of the year yet, but we know that we've got, at the moment, we're forecasting nearly £140,000 surplus, which is partly to do with some of the things that we said we might spend money on not being spent, partly to do with perhaps better financial performance from the hub than was budgeted, and also because we put in some contingency sums in case we felt we needed to pick up some services that were no longer going to be provided by NCC. Now, in light of that, I felt, and the committee agreed, that it would be very difficult to make a significant increase in precept when we were already boosting reserves by quite a bit. But what we did decide in the end was that we would recommend a 2%, so inflation-related increase, but a relatively small increase of 2%. The budget's been prepared in that way, and what it means is that there are some areas of expenditure which I now go on to explain, which were in previous drafts of budgets, which have now been taken out in order to get back to that number. So the first one is QVH. Now, QVH had £10,000 identified in the 3-year plan for improvement works, which obviously would just have to come straight from the council balancing grant because the money's got to come from somewhere, and that's the only place it can come from. We decided that we would remove that and to keep the OTC balancing grant to QVH at the same level of £12,000. But we did note that there was actually a surplus from the previous 2 years, or last year and this year, and therefore there is some money in the QVH account that could be used for some improvement works. And of course, there's always also the potential for that to be supplemented in the next financial year as well. The next item was the revenue reserve, where it was highlighted that the current reserve level is less than our recommended 3 months expenditure level, and we said we should increase that. Now again, because there's a big surplus from the current year, then that obviously can be funded from that surplus. will still leave us more than £100,000 in reserves, which potentially we can use in the next financial year to cover some of the improvements and enhancements that we might like to do, which we're not going to be able to fund through a bigger precept. And then there's a list then of other things that were in there which need to be funded from other not from revenue precept monies, but from other activities. So that included the recreation ground, where the money we would like to refurbish at the skate park, or whatever other appropriate youth recreation measures we decide are the right thing to do once those plans have come forward. But we need to be looking at sourcing alternative fundings for that if we're going to make it happen. Similarly, Snipe Meadow, again, as you all know, that's been ongoing for some time. We would definitely want to do the work, but again, there's some potentially alternative funding available which could help that happen. The new maintenance workshop was in there, but we'd always talked about that being funded through a public works loan, so again, shouldn't be part of the revenue budget. And then finally is the NCC services amount, which is, I referred to earlier. We've got a contingency amount in the last financial year in case we needed to pick up some services. That money's not been spent, so it's still there in reserves. So therefore, the committee is suggesting that we shouldn't put it in again. That money is still there, so we'll keep it and use it if needs be. And then the final thing on my summary note was just to note the fact that the Lisa has obviously moved into the estates deputy clerk role, but her role is now vacant, so we have included the monies in order to backfill that role, and at some point we'll come to full council with a recommendation to recruit for that role. So that's it in summary. Sorry if that's a bit of a race through. I mean, what it means is basically the budget looks very similar to what this year's actual expenditure was. We've still got some monies in reserves, which we said we shouldn't be unwilling to use that if we've got appropriate projects or appropriate spending that comes up during the year. But we don't really want to be putting any more on the council taxpayers, given, as I say, that we're running a big surplus from this current year. I'll throw it open to you guys now, I guess, if anyone's got any things they want to raise, comments, clarifications.
It's interesting that the hub is not. Is it a case of it's not losing as much as it was?
Yes.
Or it's actually making?
Well, no, and
what's the cause?
I mean, I'm not as close to it perhaps as some other people are, but I think
selling more.
I think that basically they've been doing a better job. The turnover's been increasing year on year. They've kept control of the costs. They're still not. There's still obviously is a cost in terms of the overhead, which we need to remember. But I think, as people have said before, you've got to question whether how much of that overhead would actually be avoided if the hub wasn't there anyway, because you've still got the building to heat and light and occupy.
So how long till it breaks even then, do you reckon?
I can't remember what the numbers look like for next year. It's still not showing that it's breaking even next year, but it's much closer than it was. Sorry, the numbers are in the pack. I
just wanted the explanation.
I couldn't do it. Did you want to say
something? Well, 2 points, which I'll restrict myself to. One is, why is the budget for CCTV going up by thousands of pounds? It seems as if it's gone from about 350 to 3,500 or something, 5,500.
It's because we're looking to upgrade it, certainly in town centre, get it up to HD, and the fact that it's not a swinging camera that misses half. If the camera's facing that way and something happens, it misses it.
I'm happy if it's an upgrade. I was just slightly worried if it was suddenly
cost an upgrade.
Additional. The other thing was, just on a pretty practical level, I'm all in favour of using a Public Works loan board to finance the workshop. But surely the actual cost of that loan should be reflected somewhere in the accounts, and it doesn't appear to me.
No, but I don't see that being built, and therefore the loan being happening for very much at all in the next financial year. I mean, if we manage to build it by the end of next year, then obviously it'll be up to the budget for the following year. If if we build it by the end of 2019, okay, then maybe should be 3 or 4 months payments in there. But I think that's the logic there, is that it's not.
I was hoping we might get on with it a bit faster than that.
So was I, David. I want the unit.
I mean, it's progressing, but yeah, it's not. We're not there yet, are we? I mean, these things do take a bit of time, don't they?
Just one point of note. So, I mean, you can't crystal ball gaze or anything like that. But is there anything in the future that anyone can see that would make next year's precinct leap higher than? So if we put 2% in there, and something comes up and it goes to 5 or 6%, say, the year after, and everyone would turn around in horror. Is there any? Is it? I don't know.
It was in the thought process when we did this.
Yeah, to actually
councils
raise 1 year, then you get an even flow.
Yeah.
A rising graph rather than.
No, it's the point that Emma made in the meeting was that there are experiences even of our council where that has happened in the past. We've had a low year and then a high year.
We do seem to.
Yeah. So we're keeping it 2, which is a reasonable.
Which is reasonable.
Yeah.
I think if we weren't running such a big surplus, I think there'd be more concern. But we've got quite a lot of money.
No, I fully understand. I just it's just part of my thinking is to keep it even rather than jumpy.
I'll come to that, Terry, in just a second. I just wanted to go back on that point about the cost of loan. The cost of loan, of course, is going to be less than the rental on the existing building. So if we do manage to build it sooner rather than later, then we shouldn't hopefully not be paying the rental on the old building for very much of next year, or very much once it's done.
Well, on that point, if we're not going to put any provision in for borrowing money, then that means, unless we change our mind and alter the budget after 3 or 6 months, then that means that we can't borrow any money.
So what you're saying is we should be budgeting for the 50,000 to be received from a loan in order to do the workshop.
If we're considering borrowing money for the workshop or whatever else, then I think that that should go in the budget.
Okay.
We might not spend it because we might not do it, as you said, till the following year. But
so we'd put two items in the budget. One, an income of £50,000 from a loan, and secondly, an expenditure of £50,000 on the building. Yeah. I mean that wouldn't change.
I just don't want to have halfway through these or 3/4 of the way through the year. We want to do something, and we've shot ourselves in the foot.
It's a good point, and I don't think we consider that in committee as to whether that is something that we should do in order to make sure we're not hamstrung, like you say. I don't know. I'm quite sure what the rules are.
I support that view totally.
Yeah, that we should put it in. Okay. I mean, having been suggested, I have to say it does make sense because that is the intention. That is the intention.
It's complete common sense.
Yeah.
To me.
Then, having opened it up, surely we have to do the same approach for the boardwalk.
Oh, crikey!
Well, I don't know.
The money's coming in from one place and going out to another. So we're not taking it out of revenue. We understand. But
I'm not sure we've actually determined where that would come from. I don't know. And having not been in this position before, I don't know what we've done in the past. If we are able to access grants or Section 106 monies during the year, would that prevent us from taking them and spending them?
Anything,
okay, as long as it doesn't prevent the boardwalk going ahead.
There is some money for the boardwalk.
Yeah, but it's just in this discussion here, as long as we haven't got a login, I don't want to close the boardwalk thing down for a year because we forgot tonight to do something.
And I think, as we've said, it is we do have. It's not we're not pushing it into intention is not to kick it down the road and not do it. It's just to recognise that we're not going to be able to fund it through just putting money on the precept. But we'll have to find money from
so other sources. At one level, it looks exactly the same as the workshop. Money comes in and goes out. So I just don't want us to rule out the boardwalk for next year if I've not mentioned it now.
Did you want to say?
You said, I don't know what we did in the past. Well, I don't know about the recent past, but the past. All we thought about was the next year. nobody thought about the year after, or the year after that, or the year after that, what we might want to do.
Right.
So I might try another one of my hobby horses, which is a 3-year plan,
Yeah.
or
Which
even a 5-year plan.
Which we've now got, which admittedly,
Where we go?
yeah.
Makes
Just
sense.
Go on.
on that point about the workshop, although we've got some costs, we haven't got all of the costs.
Right.
So it would need, I would need a conversation with the architect to see
Right.
if he can give us a, I mean, I know how much the actual structure is going to cost,
Yeah.
but it's all the other
All
work.
the other words, yeah. Yeah.
So it's really, I'll see if I can get a rough estimate, but I'm not sure that I'm going to get.
Well, if we, I mean, I don't know where the 50,000 came from in the past, but if the 50,000 feels like it's about right, and given that we've not actually voted and to commit that yet, but that was done on the basis that if we could do it at that cost, it was more cost effective than continuing to rent the property we've got. I guess if it was a lot more than that, you might have to revisit the question about whether it was still a sensible thing to do it. But
Well, it depends on how quickly we want to return the money.
That's it, yes, that's what I'm going to say. If you take it out
yeah,
for 20 years, it'll cost.
When we did this building, it was done on, budgeted on 25 years.
yeah. Which you might argue is a bit long for a tin shed.
I mean, the workshop, I think,
Apparently that's
about,
the norm for this sort of project.
Yeah.
the workshop's about 28,000, I think, the
Yeah.
actual structure, but it's everything
Everything
else.
else, which sort of kind of feels like 50's
Yeah.
not a million miles away then, doesn't it? Again, I'm not trying to sort of railroad it through, but do people feel that we've got a budget that we are happy to sign off on tonight? I mean, bear in mind we haven't got a huge amount of opportunity between now and when it needs to be submitted. We've got one more neighbourhood plan meeting, so we won't have hours and hours available to discuss it.
No, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah. No.
My biggest concern, frankly, is how we're going to deal with the NCC deficit
Yes.
and how that's going to hit us.
Yes. I think we all are. I mean, this is why we put the money in last year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why we bunged it into a
Yeah.
fund.
Yeah.
But it's still sitting there like the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
It still is a great concern of mine because that's where the real big money is going to maybe hit us.
Maybe.
Big time.
Yeah.
Well, it might.
Maybe. But I mean,
it might.
yeah.
It might not.
Yeah.
But we know they're in a
Yeah.
pretty parlous state. Yeah. And what's going to happen is it will all come tumbling down, towards us, and they'll go, oh hello, here's that lot. We can afford things. So you'll bung it on a precept. That's the bit that I've got my eyesight on, really.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a fair point. I think that's what we've all been very much focused on as well. Can I ask someone if they're happy to propose then that the budget, as presented, with the addition of the £50,000 for public works loan received and expenditure on the building, is passed for is approved tonight. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Councillor Robertson's, Councillor Oakes has seconded. So those in favour? That was everyone, I think. So no one against? No. Okay, great. Thank you. Training courses is the next item. So I think Emma, you concluded a training training plan. Basically, some straightforward. It's good bit of training in there for councillors and for staff, for officers. So again, I'm assuming that everyone's happy with that. So we'll ask someone to propose that.
I'm happy.
Thank you. And Councillor Seals has seconded, and those in favour. Yeah, I think we're all there on that one. Okay, great. So next item then, update on the neighbourhood plan.
Thank you, Tony. That's very good. Sit back, Tony. Okay, right, the neighbourhood plan. Let me start by saying that obviously Tony and I have sort of been doing this along with Roger because we've been sort of doing the working parties and things like that. And Tony and I have actually had to do a very, very steep learning curve because up until June, July, I don't know about Tony, but I hadn't been anything to do with planning.
I was just an engineer.
So we have really had to work very, very hard to understand everything that's in the neighbourhood plan and all the complications with the neighbourhood plan. So it's been a really, really hard, complicated learning curve for me, Tony and I. At the last, as you know, we've got a consultant on board, he's doing our essays. In between that, there's draft local plans come in, which obviously Tony will deal with in a minute. But we've found out, you see, along the way, that not only do we need consultants for the SEAs or SAs, we also needed a planning consultant, which we didn't know about. So over the last 10 days, I've been going through several different planners to find a planner that might be able to do the job within the timeline we've got, because we have to get this presented to ENC before the 18th of February. And we've come up with a planner which I think is good enough. We've sent him details down of what he needs. He's come back with everything he needs to do to make sure that the neighbourhood plan, with the SAAs, with the other consultants, will actually go through. It's gone through everything, so we're there at the moment. And we'll just go back slightly. We did send the scanning report to Richard Palmer. That was supposed to be in 2 weeks ago. It still hasn't arrived. He did promise it for me today. It still hasn't arrived. We won't now get it till Friday. So we haven't really got a lot of chance to do it before Christmas. So, as I say, we now need to get a planner on board. And there's a list of work that the planner needs to do. Now, I'm going to read out ones to you, right? And as I say, I'm not 100% au fait with everything that he wants to do, but this is what he's got to do.
Can I just interrupt a minute?
Yeah.
What is this? Where's this come from that we've got to have a planner?
From Richard Palmer.
So what suddenly brought this up?
Well, because he wrote, did you not get a letter, you were going to send a letter, that letter of George Whitehead's round from Richard Palmer, Richard Palmer. Do you remember the letter from George Whitehead? You were going to send it round to discuss it with people.
No, okay, just get to the answer of it though. You know, the guys from Bennerfield Road, you know, went in to see Richard Palmer, and he gave them more than they were expecting in terms of, you know, what we need to move, our next moves on it. So what we've come back and realised is we've spoken to the SEA consultants. They're explaining to us how their expertise is all around SEAs and that part of it, and the legal challenges that we've got with ENC, you know, need a proper planning person to do them, and it's not the SEA people. So it's the legality of the document that we've got and challenges on that. So essentially, this paper that Richard gave us, you know, back in May, you know, the one that looks a bit like that, with, yeah, all the details. They're all getting into the legalities of the document, and we are not qualified to reliably go back and respond to that. We can put a response in, but it'll get bounced back again. So we're saying it's got to be right this time.
Yeah, what Richard Palmer said to George Whitehead was, sorry.
Last year, when we were having problems with that same site, we had a planning law specialist solicitor involved, recommended to us by ENC, who did an excellent job in sorting the whole matter out for us.
Yeah.
Produced drafts of letters, and at that stage produced the answers we needed to deal with all the issues.
Yeah, specifically for that site. Yes, so what it's moved on now is the whole document.
It's the whole, you see, unfortunately, Richard Palmer, I sent you, you did receive a copy. Richard Palmer has basically said that almost all the document from the neighbourhood plan was not in the correct format and did not have any strategic planning situation. And he emphasised that with George Whitehead the other day, he actually said to him that the neighbourhood plan will not go through because Oundle have not done a planning consultancy on it. And he was quite glib about it. He knew that from way back before you put Reg 14, the neighbourhood plan was not going to go through because we didn't have that planning consultant on board all the time with the correct form that he wanted. So what we've had to do over the last 10 days, 2 weeks, 10 days, is actually go back and get all the details we can from his report, from this planner, from the SA, from the consultants, to start getting it sorted. What we've now got is a situation where we can get it done. If we get the timeline right, we will have a draft neighbourhood plan to Oundle Council by the next full council meeting in January, and that we will be able to produce a neighbourhood plan without flaws and present it to ENC at your meeting on the 18th of February. It'll all be done, tied up, and it'll have little bows on it, because there won't be any way that it can be faulted. But we have to get it done. We can't, we haven't got no choice. Sorry, David, go on.
I suspect that if it was gift wrapped by Harrods themselves, ENC will still find a reason.
I think it's
And the
just
reason for that
delaying.
is that they have no interest in letting our neighbourhood plan come through. This sort of problem wasn't encountered elsewhere.
No.
As members around this table know, I sat on the neighbourhood plan group in Blackpool. They went through a very similar process to ourselves. They got in a consultant to assist them, which we've done. Nobody suggested that there was anything of that nature wrong with their plan, and it simply sailed through. Now, we have done huge amounts of additional work to Blackpool. We've tried to dot every I and cross every T at least twice. And it seems to me that all that happens is every time we come up with something, ENC put a hurdle in the way. Now, you have to start feeling after a while, this has to be a deliberate policy.
Oh, it is.
And the deliberate policy is that they are determined that no neighbourhood plan will come out of this council because they want to get their local plan through regardless. We will have to go through these hoops, but I have absolutely no confidence that whatever we produce, ENC will say is acceptable.
We have had different stages throughout this neighbourhood plan process over a number of years. We have had 3 different planning consultants working with the council. Maroon Planning in the early days, am I correct? We then had James Wilson.
I've spoken to James the other day.
Yep. And we then had the last guy that we had,
Mike Hayburn.
Mike
Yeah, I
Hayburn.
spoke to him as well.
Now, all 3 of them have quite competently put in neighbourhood plans for other people. They've submitted neighbourhood plans before and since. They've all worked on ours. They've all had their own slight different slant on it, but they've all come up with more or less the same things as to what was required. So I'm struggling to see why, if we've had these 3 people working on it, going back to, what, 2014, 2015, why our plan is unacceptable.
Because, unfortunately, Roy, in that document there that Richard Palmer sent us, the rules have changed and we were operating on a different set of rules. And those rules are now gone, and we have to basically go to the new rules, otherwise it won't go through. So we've got a situation where, and I understand what you're saying, I really do, but there's nothing else we can do. We've got to go, if we want the neighbourhood plans to go to full fruition, we've got to do what we've got to do. We can't go around it. We really, really can't. I mean, we've all challenged the local plan. We know that the local plan is still full of holes and problems in it. And that will be challenged over time. Believe me, Tony, I and Roger have already sort of starting to sort of think of ways around to get the local plan slowed up a little bit. But that's, again, with Jake Voles there and the other two members of the NC that we started. They've started that. We know what we want to do to carry that on. But we need to get this, the planner on board. We need to get this last piece of the jigsaw in. If we do that, when we present it, we know and we will have absolute certainty with what we have done. There is no way it can be turned down. I've sent, by the way, I've got Tom Pusgrave involved as well, because I believe he needs to put pressure onto the ENC. So that's being done as well. I've taken that route. So we are really pushing ahead with everything we can do. But unfortunately, we've come across these. As I say, we didn't know when we started in May, June. I had no idea about planning, and I've really learned an awful lot. I now know what he's done. Quite frankly, I think was wrong, but we can't say that's wrong. We have to go with what we've got to get done, and that's where we're at.
Have you got a date when these new rules came into effect?
I don't. It's probably
unfortunately, Roy. It's just, you know, it's happened.
Yeah, it's
you
no
know,
good sort
yeah,
of.
we can find out when it did. But our problem is our only legal input to our discussion is Richard over the other side of the fence. So we need, you know, to get this thing through, we've got to put it in the best legal condition that he can't pick holes in it. And you know, we are at the best in the world. We're amateurs at this because, you know, and it's all because of the building. You know, and that's why Gladthorne's was so much easier than ours. You know, it didn't have the major developers.
Now, is it a legal person? You're saying there's all.
Yeah, essentially, it's a planning expert.
It's a planning expert, Nick Griffin.
Are you talking about
planning law?
Are
Yeah.
you talking about a planning lawyer, not a
No,
planning engineer?
No, it's planning law. He understands the planning laws and rules and regulations. I'm not saying he's a lawyer, but he understands his rules and regulations, as Richard Palmer does. You know, so we need equals. Richard can walk all over us because we don't know what, you know, we don't know about half of this stuff.
So basically, it's going to cost money.
Yes,
that's
definitely.
That's
Yeah.
the bottom line.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about how much money?
8,800.
Just as well, we need to put the precinct up.
Well, that's plus the
We haven't got it on the agenda.
So, you know, we've been given a clear mandate, you know, to get this plan through. Yeah, and now you know, it's up to us to make a decision. Are we going to do it or not? Because if we don't do it,
You
then we're
haven't
not.
got any
We've got
budget
to go
ready,
through
have
with
you?
it, but I'm in full support of Councillor Chapel. I mean, I think that even when we've done it,
Well, you see, the problem we have is, there's the problem. If we don't do it, then we're going to be throwing £14,500 away that we've already done.
absolutely, yeah,
You know,
I agree.
and I'm not one of those. I'm not going to go out to the people around and say, sorry, you know, we're not going to go any further. We've lost. I'm not going to do that. You know, it's not in my nature to do that. I don't lose. So we have to move forward. I don't want to do it. I don't want to spend the money. You know, I'd rather say to you, here's the completed plan. It's not going to cost any more money. Bum, bum, bum. I can't do that. We are, as I said, Tony and I are amateurs. We have worked really, really hard on this. And believe me, you know, I've spent actually the last 2-3 weeks more time on this than I've actually done at work. So I know that, you know, it's a lot of money. All I can say is it's got to be done. So you either say yay or nay, and if it's nay, well, that's fair enough. It doesn't matter. You know, it's the end of the neighbourhood plan. We can't take it forward. We have no other way forward.
I think there's an element of psychology about this. I want to work with ENC, not against them.
Well, we are working within ENC, Neville. It's just they are determined to do their plan, not ours.
Yes, the point is I understand that. But there's an element of a little bit of psychology about this, as to how you work your way around that.
There is no working way around it. We don't do this, we're not going to do it.
Well, look, I can't really accept that.
Okay.
We're a relatively small parish council, and we really put the wind up people, because there are some very, very eloquent and efficient individuals who've actually taken some people to task, and they've done it very successfully. But on the other side, they don't like that at all.
I mean, what we
So
don't... Yeah.
I'm not sure the best way of moving forward from my side. I'm merely pointing out that we've got to be treading we're on eggshells here, really.
Yeah. What we haven't discussed yet is our response to the local plan. I mean, there's two threads going here, aren't there?
Agreed.
There's
Agreed.
what we don't know is what ENC are going to come back with following a consultation on the local plan. Now, if they carry on regardless and don't change anything, then clearly that doesn't meet what we feel needs Netherlands people. And we'll have to see what steps we can take to challenge that further if that case. But it would be much better if we get to a situation where we are not, at loggerheads with ENC planning department, and we actually can come to a consensus about what is the right decision for Amble. David.
What I do think is important actually is to follow up on the point that Councillor Sparks made. I'd like to know exactly when these regulations changed, not least because depending on when they changed, it raises questions about the experts that we've already hired.
Quite.
Because if those regulations had changed at a point when we were using them, how come nobody bothered to point it out to us? How come we ended up producing a plan which, according to Richard Palmer, doesn't meet the required tests, and we've paid some of these people a small fortune? So quite apart from the issue that we're going to have to grapple with today, which, however much it goes against the grain, there is, as the saying goes, no choice, we ought to be exploring this other side of it, because it may just be a very unfortunate sort of happenstance of timing. But my suspicion is that if these regulations change somewhere in the space of the last 6 to 12 months, then at least one of our experts seems to have failed to pick the point up entirely.
Can I read some of the things that...
One of our experts has also. The district council were working hand in glove with us. They presented jointly with us a presentation to the town at the Queen Victoria Hall last year. They were working with us there to present our neighbourhood plan, and they weren't saying at that stage that there's some new regulations out that have changed.
Can I just say, Roy, we had a meeting at the QVH with Sean, David Brackenbury and Richard Palmer, which Richard then actually stated at that time that although he was there at the QVH in that time supporting that, he had grave doubts about the neighbourhood plan. At that meeting with us, I mean, you were there, Joe, Tony was there, we were all there, and he said they had grave doubts about the neighbourhood plan at that meeting with us. So what he said at that QVH with yourselves was not what he said to us in front of Sean and David Brackenbury. So you can see.
Well, you said it to the town.
Yeah, you can see what I'm saying, Roy. The sands have shifted, because basically they want the local plan, and that's what they're after. They haven't. We managed to get, with the insistence of Millers and George Whitehead, actually get appointments with Richard Palmer to discuss those sites, because he wasn't even going to bother to talk to them. this is him, it's not us. It was Richard Palmer that wasn't going to bother to contact any of the other sites at all, apart from the 3 that he wanted. Sorry.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is exactly what we're fearful of. And I'm just wondering, going back to the budget, whether we need to put another 20,000 quid in the budget to pay for ever more an ongoing situation here.
We're not going to.
Seriously.
We're not going to put another
Nonsense.
We're not going to put another 20,000 in. I don't think there's any need for that, Val, because once we've got this done, it will be done, and we won't be able, or they hopefully ENC won't be able to sort of kick it into the long grass, because it will be presented in the right manner to his specifications with the planners and the
I
consultants.
appreciate that, but we've been there 3 times before.
I can only do what.
3 different consultants.
We can only do what we can do. As I said, can I read 1 or 2 bits out from the planning consultant? That you know, because I've got a long list. I'm not going to read them all out, but I'll read. You know, the first one, just the chosen spatial strategy of numerous small sites across the town has not been assessed against other approaches. The spatial approach needs to be evidenced, accessed, and the most appropriate taken forward. That's 1. Number 3, the need of policies map and spatiality explain the policies. Number 4, there's several ones, but for instance, the Oundle Town design statement doesn't go far enough. It needs design visions and then 3 or 4 other things. Number 5, those are mainly drafting amendments to provide clarity within PPF compliance legality, robust, but they are far more meaty ones. For instance, on page 8 of the native plan, need link to full site by site assessment. Page 33, is there evidence to demonstrate the primary shopping frontages? These are all things that have been picked up by the planning consultants that they can't answer from the neighbourhood plan that we've got.
With all due respect, certainly just take that last point. The primary shopping frontages are currently defined by ENC. To the best of my recollection, there was nothing in our plan that altered their own definition of those shopping frontages.
But it's not in our plan.
Well, it depends what you say, what is not. I mean, there's an awful lot of background information that inevitably is not included in a plan. It doesn't mean to say it hasn't been done, it doesn't exist.
The problem is, with Richard Palmer, if it's not in the plan, it hasn't been done.
That is not,
and he rejects.
it's not the correct approach.
No,
I have to say
his,
that if that is the way the ENC are handling it, the sooner we end up in the High Court challenging them, the better, because this is nonsense.
Well,
it is not applying planning law at all.
Exactly.
There seems to be some frolic of his own, for which there is little justification in my view. Now, I've spent a very long time looking at it. I've talked to numerous of our own experts, and I am coming rapidly to the conclusion that the way that this is being handled by ENC should be reported by us to the local government ombudsman sooner rather than later.
well, see, that's one of the things we're contemplating. But we can't not stop what we're doing.
No, I agree, we can't stop what we're doing. It
We've
doesn't mean to say we
got to
can't
the
fight on
ombudsman,
more
and I
than
totally agree
Which
with
of the,
David.
was it 7 objectives of the plan back in 2015-16? We had methodologies. The housing methodology has been looked at quite a few times over that time, and certainly Maroon Planning went into that in some detail, looking at each site and looking at, out of the sites they had, and they had something 20 odd sites, 24 was it, sites, 25
26.
sites?
26, he brought it down to 7 eventually.
In the original call for sites, and that methodology narrowed it down to the 7 that went forward. So that methodology work was all done then. So all of that stuff is there as an appendix to the plan. It's all there. It's all.
But unfortunately, I'm sorry to go back to this, Roy, but unfortunately, Richard Palmer has told us that what we've done is wrong. We have to act.
Could we therefore ask him to also quote, with his comments, which of these changes in the law he's relating it to?
We could do, but
He has to
all we're
justify
doing
it.
is delaying. All we're doing is we're not delaying anything.
We're not delaying anything on
No.
our part, we're
No, no,
asking him
yeah.
for...
Listen, believe me, Val, I have asked and asked and asked for questions and answers. I've sent letters. Well, you'll know, Tony. I've always copied Tony and Emma and other people in with most of them, not all of them, because I'm, sometimes forget. But 90% of what I've emailed to Richard Palmer, I've copied in Sean, I've copied in Paul Bland, Jerry, I've copied in Tony, I've copied in Roger.
I take on board that, I understand that.
We are really,
Has
really
he
hammered it
said
down.
which of the new law changes these
He keeps evading the question.
No, he hasn't.
He's evading the
Okay,
question.
that's-
I mean, there was one
That's
point
fine,
I've
here we
made.
Yeah.
There's one point I've made 5 times now in the last 7 weeks. Is an EIA been done for Cotterstock Road? Because one of the things he complained about in the neighbourhood plan was an EIA not done on Benfield Road. Benfield Road, Cotterstock Road, same size. So far, he has not come back with the answer if he's done an EIA on Cotterstock Road. He comes back and says, well, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing the other, but he doesn't answer the question. So that's where I'm at. I mean, going back to the sites.
Peter, sorry, can I?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sort of curtail debate, but we're not actually moving anything forward here. We're just reiterating the problems, which I think we're all fairly familiar with now, which is, so, I think, I'm just looking at the clock, we've still got a number of agenda items to get through.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'm not complaining at all, I'm just sort of saying, I'm just saying, we're not really raising any new points here, we're just going round again, it's the same old ground. So if people have had a chance to say what they've said, I think we've all said we need to keep pressing on, which is, yes, we've agreed that previously. I still think there's a strong need for us to work collaboratively, if at all possible, with ENC, and hopefully we'll get some response from the local plan, and the local plan will take on board some of the comments that we and others are giving. But at the moment, I'm not sure we're actually progressing things. Roy, did you want to say something?
This 8,800 for this planning expert, then, are we going to have a proposition for that in the January meeting?
Yeah.
And vote on it then?
If we do it then, we won't get it through.
But we haven't got a proposition yet, have we? So what?
That's what I'm saying,
We approved some money last time, didn't we? For the scoping study, the
Scanning.
Scanning. Yes, yeah. Are you saying you now need some approval for some more money?
Yes.
So why didn't you put that into the agenda for tonight for approval?
Because I only got it today, because I've been working 10 days to try and get some idea of costs.
So have you got a quote then?
Yes, here.
Right. So we need to get that into next full council.
That'd be the 7th, 8th.
8th.
Okay.
Who would too late?
Well, you're going to do anything between now and the 8th anyway, is he?
Well, yeah, he is actually. He said he's going to do it in 15 days. We'll have it sorted.
Does this go back into the emergency thing?
Well, I think-
Sorry,
I
I'm
think
not
you would
trying
have
to
to
be
say that this probably is.
You also need
Because
to work out
we're hitting a brick wall
this-
again. And if the only way of shifting it is to approve some expenditure, then I, for one, would be prepared to see it done on an emergency basis, because otherwise we lose a month.
Yeah.
We haven't really got that much time to lose. We have to get our plan sorted before they can get their district plan adopted.
Exactly.
Because once their district plan's
Standing orders
adopted,
out the window.
essentially our neighbourhood plan can't go against it.
No.
So we have to get there first. And if the only way we can get there first is to get on with it, then I think we must get on with
Fully
it.
agree with
Subject
you.
to any legal advice that the clerk may have.
Yeah, I am quite concerned because you're not just talking small amount of money.
No.
You've also got no budget, so you've already blown the neighbourhood plan budget, taken 2,100 from the contingencies that was set aside for.
That's what I just said.
I am just concerned that I know it is, you say it's an emergency, there are no members of the public being able to have a chance on whether more money should be spent.
Well, yeah, just in terms of the members of the public, we had a very clear mandate from the public, which was, they want the Oundle neighbourhood plan to push through. And I think we would have a very tough job telling them that we let it go because of a decision this evening.
In terms of money, we are, I can't remember what the figure was you said earlier, £137,000.
Yes. So we can
in
find
surplus.
We can find the money. Yes.
In our budget for this year that's happening now, £137,000 to the good, but there's some stuff in there I know, don't ask me to name it, which is not to the good. So all those figures in there are fluid. So if we're going to overspend on this budget, it's at the £137,000. It just happens to be over. I can't see any other way, quite frankly. And councillors who've been working on that since before I was on the council before, I don't think this is any poor reflection on work that they've done at all. It's been a tortuous process since ever I've been involved in council. If other people change the goalposts, if we still want to play the game, we've got to play by the new rules. If we do want to pursue it, as Councillor Chappell alluded to before, I think that's a separate issue. Which maybe needs some sort of paper on as to what we might do and then considered at council, because we're not going to do that next week. We do have to do this next week.
That would have to go onto the next agenda, though. I mean, I think that's quite an important point, that it goes, if it goes on to the Ombudsman or in that direction as well, then that should be agended for the next full council meeting.
I mean, we have been talking about Ombudsman. We've actually been talking about a step up from that as well. But the Ombudsman is the best course at the moment. But we can't do that until after Christmas anyway, because we need more time on that one. Yeah. We need to sort of go through and make sure.
This one is very pressing.
So we approve the money tonight.
I hope so.
And move forwards.
I hope so. If we can get this approved tonight, we can actually get this man on board, because the fear is he'll pick up another job. We'll lose him.
Can I just question how time critical this really is? Because we're not talking about it all going to be done and dusted in a month's time or something, are we? I mean, no, we're not. This process will run for another 12 months at least.
Oh, sure. So in terms of our document that they are citing doesn't exist, we have to make sure that document does exist and it is legally robust.
Yes,
existing.
Absolutely.
So in that big paper that Richard gave, he kept on saying that we haven't seen this, we haven't seen that. And also in his conversations, he's saying that since May, he's seen no progress from Oundle Town Council. I'm
not disputing any of that, but I'm just questioning whether I'm just questioning whether 2 or 3 weeks to get it onto the next council agenda, so it's dealt with properly in a manner that's that it should be, is really going to make that much difference, because it's the 2-3 weeks of Christmas and New Year. So is it really going to even push it back by 3 weeks? It might even only push it back by a week or two. And given that we're going to be 2020 before there's a neighbourhood plan is adopted at the very earliest, does it make that much difference?
I feel it does. If I was the consultant, I got other work. I wasn't waiting for this job off Oundle Town Council. If we say we're going to go back and we'll tell you in January, he said, well, I can't fit it in now. But we're just assuming he can drop everything to do our job for us. We need to help him.
I hear the words. I just find it a little bit hard to believe, to be perfectly honest, because they've only just given me the quote today. You tell me, so we haven't. Emma's not even seen
I have been talking to people for 10 days.
But Emma's not even seen a quote yet.
No, I know.
And they know that he's going to understand that any expenditure is going to have to be approved by council.
So that's why I brought it tonight.
Well, you didn't bring it tonight, did you?
No, I tell you what, Joey. If you feel like that, that's fine. I'll give you all the word, and I will withdraw from the neighbourhood plan. I'm not going to carry on with my,
Tony, I'm just trying to explain.
No,
There is
I'm
there
quite
is a
happy
due,
for
sorry,
you
not
to
sorry,
take it
Peter,
on.
there is a due process here.
Yeah, well,
and
you
can't
take it on.
You
then,
can't
Graham.
just.
I'll bring the box in tomorrow.
I'm not going to take
and
it
you
on,
can
Peter.
take it
I'm
on.
not going to
Because
take it
I'm
on,
not going
Peter.
to do it. It's not going to work. We're not going to get
No,
it
the-
out.
the- no,
in
the
time.
question-
It's
question
not,
now is-
it's not going to work if you try and do it on your own without following the procedures
I'm not
appropriate.
doing it on
Council.
my own.
David.
The key thing is we have to beat ENC. You don't beat ENC by waiting 3 weeks to do something procedurally that we have a valid excuse for saying we've got to get on with it. And at this stage, I think we've got to get on with it. We need all the advantages we can get to try and get ahead and stay ahead of ENC. And I'm quite happy to propose that we spend that money. And I'm sure it'll get seconded. And I'm pretty sure it'll get carried. And if we have to have an argument with an auditor later, we'll have to have the argument with the auditor later about what does or doesn't constitute an emergency. But to my mind, we got the backing, as Tony said, at that public meeting. They want us to press ahead with this neighbourhood plan. In our judgment, the only way of doing that is to crack on with this piece of work when we crack on with it. And on that basis, I'll make the proposal now to end this debate, that we actually spend this money.
Can I just take a couple of comments in?
I was going to say, with Christmas and the New Year in the way, all sides, including the ENC and everybody else, including these consultants, nobody is likely to be doing anything. They might, if we gave them the order tomorrow, they might get a couple of days in this week, if they're ready to go straight away, and they might get a day in on the Monday before we meet on the Tuesday. But there's not going to be a lot of progress if it has to wait for the next council meeting.
That was my point, but I don't seem to be in the majority there with that opinion. Is it, someone else wanted? Is it Neville? Maybe you speak?
No, I was going to second the motion.
Okay. Okay, I'm very happy to go to a motion. I think, it sounds like at least a fair number of people around the table would like to go ahead on the basis that it's an emergency and we need to approve the funding, yeah?
Ultimately, it's your decision. All I can do is give my advice. You make the decision.
I heard the advice.
Okay, so the proposal is that we approve £8,800 expenditure for a planning consultant to work on the neighbourhood plan, yeah? As an emergency measure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Sorry, just one technical point. It's 8,800 plus VAT.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Does that matter to us?
No,
No.
payment.
All right.
No.
I just want to make
Yeah. Good point, good
20% in it somewhere. Right.
so, is there someone wanting to second
I'll
this?
second it, yeah.
Neville
Neville
actually,
seconded it.
yeah.
I've done so.
Those in favour? And anyone against? I think everyone was in favour except those against. I'll abstain. So,
You'll abstain, okay?
okay.
Thank you for that, ladies and gentlemen.
Just at this point, I think we ought to say thank you for the amount of work you have done. It is appreciated enormously.
Yeah. Can I just be clear as well? It's absolutely no suggestion from me as well. That I'm not extremely grateful as well for all the work you've
No,
done.
it's all right. It's just that we've got to a point now that if we don't go for it, we're not going to get it, and it's frustrating. I'm afraid I'm a frustrated person. I don't do collective bargaining. I just do yes.
Yeah, but
I know
the
it's a
problem is
council,
that,
and it's a different kettle of fish, so I do understand, but it's just one of these things. It's got to be done, and unfortunately, it has to be done quickly.
Okay. All right.
Shall I go back to this guy and tell him that we're going to go ahead?
Yeah.
Did you say it's called Nick Griffin?
It's Nick at Griffin. I haven't got a piece of paper there.
Well, his name's Nick Griffin.
Sorry?
It's Griffin.
It's
Planning.
Nick at Griffin Planning.
It might, just a quick point, it might be, from my experience in the past, it might be advantageous, I think, to now have a complete paper trail. It's fed
It's
all the way through Emma.
It's
and
all
Jerry, so
It is,
there is
yeah.
that we can't have this. Well, some person's seen this piece of paper, some person's not seen this.
Well,
There is actually a definite motorway that.
Well, this came today, you see, so I didn't have time.
Yeah,
to
no, I understand that. I understand
But
that completely.
Every piece of paperwork that we have, I always send it to all the working party,
Right.
so that everybody has it done.
But it should be.
Tony does
it
as well.
should feed
It's
through
all
to
done.
Emma.
David's got it all the time as well.
So you have a.
I think
you have a file
probably
on
what
it.
would be a good idea is, I mean, obviously everybody doesn't want to see every email and every thread of every email,
No.
but there should be some sort of update with everything on it for everybody at these meetings, because when it's just done verbally, it's very difficult.
It's just that, to be honest, I mean, if you look at the last month of work that Tony and I have done, just on the neighbourhood plan, you know, the amount of emails we've sent out, you know, I could bring a page like that.
But sometimes it's needed.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but normally most of those emails are copied in to you and to Jerry and to David.
But
Very
not
few.
everybody gets them.
Oh no, we know, because obviously I only send it to the working party.
But then the council do need, if they need to make a decision, they need to be informed.
Yeah, okay. So I do apologise, I thought Emma had sent the George Whitehead
You didn't ask to.
letter out. I thought I did, so
No,
I'm
you
sorry,
didn't.
Emma. Yeah, I can't, you know what it's like. I've got so much, you know, I'm trying to run a
But you're the
business as
one
well
that's
as
very
everything
keen
else.
on transparency.
Look, even I can forget what I've said to people occasionally. Well, it's impossible when I'm trying to run a business and do this. But if you would like to send the letter out to everybody from George Whitehead, I'd much appreciate it. Thank you very much. And that solves the problem. Jake, did you want to?
If I'm allowed to. I would be very, very disappointed if you hadn't decided to go ahead. We need to get this neighbourhood plan. If you're going to do it, it will be worth absolutely nothing if the ENC's draft local plan goes through. And that is on February 18th, so obviously the agenda will be, the consultation document is going through right now. It finished yesterday. Everybody I know, we've managed to create hundreds of responses from Arundel with you through the meeting at St Peter's and through the Bridge Club and through Probus and whatever, Cotterstock and the villages. It would be very sad if you'd actually had to lost the neighbourhood plan, because we are at the moment covered by the Arnott plan, but the Arnott plan will mean nothing once the draft plan comes in, and there will be a draft plan regardless, because the leader wants it so that when Unitary comes, which is not far away, then we will be governed as an area from an urban area, Kettering, Corby or Wellingborough. And frankly, I don't think 1,500 houses or 1,000 houses or 2,000 houses is out of context for places in the north of the county, unless we can actually get a neighbourhood plan in, we get a draft plan in that protects this area. And that's what it's all about. The neighbourhood plan has been fundamental to that. I don't agree with Richard Palmer's site selection. It's been a real problem. We had meetings with the two guys earlier last week and then with ENC. Richard Palmer was excluded from that meeting quite deliberately to make sure that we actually had an open and honest, frank discussion with planning, the head of planning services and the legal side of the ENC. They are looking for a legal opinion on a case that happened in Tarpley. I don't really understand what that is, no doubt you'll find out. But you've done that bit, that's good.
And just so you know, we have got an appointment with Richard Palmer first week in January, which I will obviously email when I've got the date nailed down.
Okay. So, next item is the response to the draft local plan, which, Tony, I think you have circulated.
Yeah, I've
to everyone.
circulated that one. So, yeah, basically what I'd done was take the paper trail from Jerry's letter to David Oliver, and then the reply that they had, and use that as the outline for a reply. So it's short, I believe it was right to be short rather than anything long-winded. But Peter said he's happy with it. David responded, because you've got your own document as well. And I must admit, I have my own document as well that I banged in.
Yeah, I sent mine in.
Yeah.
As well.
So,
Have people read it, and are people happy with it? Okay.
I did set that second one.
I mean, I didn't respond previously because I thought it'd be better to discuss it tonight. There were a couple of areas where I have questions really, not saying it's not right. Firstly, I suppose the first thing is that we've heard several times that if we're going to respond, we need to be doing it with proper planning evidence and justifying why there are reasons for us to object to some of those things.
Yes.
I can't help but feel I've seen more of that in some of the other bits that has been prepared that hasn't quite found its way into this document. And I shall have to go back and reread them again. But I mean, didn't we have? I mean, David, your response included all sorts of good stuff in there.
Well, which I took. What I decided to do was take their criteria, then apply their criteria to the site in a critical fashion, and highlight why there were problems with these 2 of the 3 sites that they identified. But I mean, you can make a case for some arguments about all of them, because there are always going to be some issues. But it is stunning that, you know, of the 3 sites they've selected, 2 were the most unpopular sites. One has probably got more constraints than probably all of the others put together in some respects. So yes, I have produced a document, and rather unlike the Town Council one, I think I've now managed to send a copy to everybody. It did come out very late this evening to a number of people. I think some had seen an earlier piece of documentation I did. It does actually run to, I couldn't believe it when I printed it off, it actually runs to 10 pages. So there is quite a lot of detail in it, and what I'd said to Tony and Peter was, look, if you want to take any aspect out of it and add it into your own one piece, feel free to do so. I do tend to take the Mayor's point that looking at the way ENC are dealing with these things, I think unless you are terribly, terribly specific about what the issue is, they're just likely to, if not ignore it, they're not going to accord a great deal of weight to it. So I would be keen, in a sense, if the Town Council's own version could be somewhat beefed up, to perhaps include a little bit more detail than it perhaps does at the moment. I think it is absolutely vital that there is a good response from the town, and I think it's a good starting point, but I think we could probably improve on it a bit just by trying to put more detail into it. But the difficulty then is, where on earth do you stop? And that was the difficulty I was finding, that the more you look at it, the more you feel you can add, and then it does become unwieldy. So it's a fine balance to be sort of tried.
So it's a question for me of whether we're talking about the sites or we're talking about the process. You know, so in the process, I mean, if you have a look at the objections that ENC had to our neighbourhood plan, it was all about the process. You know, they said we didn't do the SEAs before we did the Reg 14, we didn't do this. And the second document, I know it came out late today because it was me having a bit of fun this morning, but when I take Richard Palmer's response and then write our version of that, you see that all the things that he was criticising us for, he's guilty of himself. You know, so he's down-selected sites before he's done an SEAs. His key point against ours was we had sites without SEAs. You know, so this document went in that next level of detail, but both of them are only really about process, not about your site-specific. You know, so if we got into site-specific, yes, you get into the sort of detail you have done there. But, you know, my major criticism of him is process, because he criticised us for process. Yeah. Now, of course, there's no harm in us bolting as many documents together as we want. You know, so
I was just going to say, I mean, is there both of I feel both are completely right in many ways. Is there a way of having that as a letter and then appendices, which is adds all of that detail into it, and some sort of link to to all of that information, because I think that Councillor Chappell's right. I mean, I think if you've got points, if you found points, they need to be bogged down. They need to be bogged down to know that we still mean business, and we have looked at all the documentation, and we have studied it, and there are faults there. I mean, is there a way of combining the two without actually having this a tome of letter, rather a short letter with appendices?
So you take the simplest issue about site selection. You know, there is a process to go through on site selection. Corby went through a process. You know, they had all the criteria for selecting the sites in Corby, and they marked each of the sites against these criteria, and then did their down selections from that. Now this is what Richard Palmer promised us that he had done when he selected the 3 sites. But when we asked him for a copy of it, he hadn't got it available. And he said he would have it at the end of November. And his last letter to us said that he can't do it until he's got a report from... So, you know, just to tackle them on process, to my mind, seems to be their biggest vulnerability, is that they haven't complied with the process that they are criticising us for not complying with. And so in my, I don't, you know, say it came out late, but in my argument in this document, I'm saying that Oundle cannot accept the ENC proposal as its neighbourhood plan, because it didn't go through the process that they told us that we hadn't gone through. You know, so, you know, so I'm only just hark on the issue of process, but, you know, there's no harm, as you say, of doing, you know, a second level of document and a slightly, you know, taking the personal reference out of David's and attaching it at the back as the Oundle backup. But I don't lose that issue, that it is process that the guy is killing us on.
I think that's very good point. That's why I say both seem absolutely right in their own respect. But if we could do, as I say, if we could have that letter about the process, and then have all the detail that David's gone into added in there somewhere, it would make you know, a better document, I feel.
So I think the best thing where we are now, if we can do something that use yourself, Jerry, as the approver, as we did with the original letter went in, it went from there. So I will take David's now, because I think you've sent me a Word copy of it, haven't you? So I can take the I and that what out, put we, whatever. But I'll do that. Get it back to you.
And I can you know, do the same. Try and suggest some improvements as well.
So then you don't have to come back to anybody between now and Friday.
So your aim is to do this week, is it?
Well, we've only got till Friday.
We've told them now.
Because we told them
Friday.
Well, more than that, you see, they told us that we could only have the extension for site-specific discussions.
Right. Right.
You know, so you notice in my document I did try to bring in the things like Fletton Field, the green space, and the other opportunities that are being missed for Oundle. Yeah. But I hadn't realised in their letter they'd actually ruled out any extension on those things. So Emma's traded and got us Friday for everything.
Okay.
But, so rather than because we would as a committee carry on making a camel out of this. Hand it over to yourself.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything very wrong with it. That was the.
So I'll do the first edit.
I mean, when you are doing that first edit, can I just raise one other thing as well, which it jumped out at me when I read it. When you're talking about site selection, you talked about in each of the Oundle site reviews, Cotterstock Road and Sir Christopher Drive come out as the weakest sites. Further in the feedback in the Oundle neighbourhood plan, Cotterstock and Sir Christopher Drive are the most opposition, both environmental and infrastructure issues. I can't disagree with what you've written, but I'm just a little bit minded of the fact that they're still the sites that we've got in our neighbourhood plan. So I'm just questioning a bit about the wording, really. I mean,
well, they're the weakest in our neighbourhood plan, but they are there. So it doesn't. It doesn't matter if you take 3 sites out of our plan, you'll still have a weakest site.
Right, I suppose
somebody will always be the weakest in a patch. You've got 7 sites.
It will, but I suppose what where I was coming from is I'm not sure that it is a objective truth, and assuming that we still want to promote development on those sites. Assuming we do still want to provide development on those sites under the neighbourhood plan, then I just wondered whether we're actually causing a problem for ourselves by providing evidence on one hand. Because you've only got to have someone come back when they look at the neighbourhood plan consultation and come back, well, actually, when you sent this into ENC on the local plan, you said those sites weren't suitable. That's what I'm a bit worried about.
There's a difference.
There's a different scale. I know there's a difference of scale, yes.
It is a point I'm quite conscious of, which is why my response is a personal response, because my personal response actually says take Cotterstock Road site out altogether. It is hardly consistent with our own plan. So you'd have to slant it more to talking about scale, because of course there's a vast difference in the scale between the 130 that they are suggesting on the site that we have suggested for 30. For the other site, they've doubled the size of it. So you can argue that the scale makes it inappropriate, but I agree it would be actually very difficult for this council to come round now and say that a particular site is completely unsuitable. It is fair to say that both of those two sites, in terms of our Reg 14 consultation process, were the two that attracted all the opprobrium. And so it would be perfectly fair to mention that fact. But I do think that there is a tightrope again to be walked in terms of we can't, in an official response to their plan, completely rubbish the site that we ourselves are including. So you have to tailor what I've said, if you were going to borrow any parts of what I've said, around that, because mine is a very personal response.
I think what you've got to realise is with the local plan, with the Cotterstock Road site anyway, the Ashton Road site is slightly different, but the Cotterstock Road site, there's 130 houses on there, of which not all of them are in Oundle's boundary, and we're not really supposed to be talking about what's in Blackthorn. We're supposed to be talking about what's in Oundle.
Of course, the great advantage is we're commenting on a local plan that is local to the entire district. So we can comment on Rushden if we want.
Oh yeah,
I don't suppose we would, but we might very well want to comment on the parish that's right adjacent.
As Blackthorn's plan's already been approved and accepted, right, and there's an examiner's report that obviously clearly states, and I can't remember the word because unfortunately my head's full of words. That's it, thank you very much. Coalescence should not really be allowed on that site. And clearly the local plan is doing away with that. I mean, there was something that Sian said, she might even want to be prepared to move the boundary.
So, Jerry, I'll get this to you by tomorrow night.
It's perfectly obvious that if that site were to be
how if you like.
it's got to have to be incorporated into that. It would make no logic for it to be in Blackthorn. But the same applies to two other sites that already exist, one of which is also in Blackthorn Parish. So I'm going to be terribly popular.
Okay. Right, okay. Just to move this to a conclusion then, I think what we're asking you to approve, I think, is that basically the document will be as written, to be reviewed and edited along the lines that we've just discussed. Are you trying to put some annexes in that you've got more perhaps of the planning detail, and to consider whether perhaps some of the wording can be finessed a little bit, which Tony and I will do between us by the end of the week for then submission. So are you happy to approve that we're delegated the authority to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, so...
At the end of the week.
Is that a proposal?
I think that was a proposal. I think Councillor Stack has proposed it, and Councillor has seconded it. So we're all in favour of that. Yeah, right. So we're not going to do that.
Please.
Yes.
Are we sending this electronically?
Yes.
Yes.
Won't get there otherwise.
Exactly.
You get lost in the Christmas.
Oh, I see. Because the Christmas present.
I don't want somebody at ENC saying we didn't receive it.
Well, I think.
No, it's going to Richard Palmer, Paul Bland and Poppy to Sean.
I mean, if we send it by post
No,
Friday as well, then it's deemed to have been sent by the date anyway, hasn't it? So
I must admit, I sent mine to Richard Palmer electronically and copied it into Sean, since he totally ignored my previous letters.
I sent mine to Sean, Paul, and David Brackenbury, and Richard.
I feel the
Oh, and Tom. Yeah, I sent it to Tom as well, yeah. He knows exactly what's going on in Alton now, believe me.
Okay, so what have we got left then? We've got a few bits of minutes to receive, haven't we? So we've got receive the minutes of the planning meeting held 4th of December.
They have been circulated, but I would just perhaps draw council's attention to one particular planning application with Webster's on the night, which was a site in Potterstock Road, the former Pembroke House, which many of you may know is lain derelict for years and then caught fire just to add to its woes. They wanted to turn that into a care home, and we had a large number of objections to that. We had formally objected, and you'll see that the objections run to an unusual length for all of our planning meetings, but other than that, the minutes are self-explanatory.
Okay. Thank you for that. Next item then is to receive the minutes from the Estates Management Committee meeting held 27th of November. Which again, we're just receiving them, so I don't think there was anything too worthy of additional comment from that. So that's well draw your attention to, so that's fine. We've got a lovely big report, which I must confess I haven't read all 50 odd pages of it yet, but it's an updated report on the Green Wheel Cycle Route Engineering Feasibility Report. So again, it's just to receive, so we'll know that we've received that. And similarly, there is in your pack a letter of thanks for the extraordinary town meeting. I think I've said it before, but thank you very much to all the councillors who contributed to that, not just those who spoke, but I know there were lots of people there, all making themselves visible and providing moral support and
microphone.
Running around with microphones. Yeah, excellent. So thank you all for your support on that. So, to receive the Town and Parish Council briefing from E&C regarding unitary proposal and announcing postponement of elections to 2019. Again, that was quite a short document, wasn't it, really? It just said we're not having an election, which is what we discussed last time, I think.
Yeah.
And then, finally, to receive news... Oh, sorry.
When this was voted on in our own council,
yes,
as council or council before,
yes,
I asked that if we could tell the town, and I was told to curb my enthusiasm and wait until the Secretary of State had spoken. So now he has spoken.
He has indeed. Yeah.
Can we publicise it far and wide as to why?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So can we get in touch with our communications group and get them to...
We've already whacked this one out on the website.
Yeah, but...
I've got a feeling it's already gone out on all of our mediums of advertising it.
Maybe put it in the next
Oracle and
or the advertising, which probably
if we do the advertising, I'll get our communications group to do it on the Facebook and Neighbourhood and the rest of it.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. Great. So the last one then was to receive news release from ENC regarding benefit from increase in business rates retention. Again, that was just a short note, wasn't it, saying how pleased we are that we'll get more say of where we spend our business rates. Okay.
You don't have to pay them.
I don't have to pay them, no. But you should be so much happier about where they're going now, Peter, honestly.
I'm not happy about that.
You told me, you cheeky bugger, you told me how you manipulate things.
Well, don't say anything.
On tape. Okay, has anyone got anything else they want to report?
Oh, yes.
Friday.
Oh, Friday nibbles, yes. Friday drinks and nibbles.
Toys for the library, have we sorted that?
No, just haven't had time at all. And I
Got
just
some
thought,
good offers on it.
when I did have time this week, I thought the chances of them getting here with Christmas anyway, so I thought it might be quite nice to do something
in the new year. Okay. Yeah, because we've got to get the books as well. No, that's fine.
Yeah, it just not enough time.
So what time is nibbles on Friday?
Midday.
Midday?
Yeah.
It's in here, yes.
Yeah, in this room.
That's good, isn't it? I'm working.
We'll save you a minute pie.
Good snap there.
May I have to present my apologies for absence?
Okay.
I won't be able to come.
That's all right. So,
I'll take the time off.
So you should.
Have a lunch break.
A long lunch break.
Great, thank you all very much.
Two apples.
Meeting closed at 9:20, yeah.